This is episode 134 of the XY podcast with Amanda Cassar. It's one thing to recognise financial abuse, yet it's another to know how to handle it, especially as an advisor. So does your licensee have resources in place to help when you see signs of financial abuse? Or if you're self-licensed, do you have a strategic plan in place to support yourself and your team when dealing with clients who may be a victim to financial abuse? Amanda Cassar is the director and advisor behind Wealth Planning Partners and Trusted Aged Care Services. She's a total XY legend who thinks globally but acts locally. She was the energetic MC at our XY on Tour event in the Gold Coast last month as well, and she's super passionate about raising financial literacy levels. So much so that she is putting together a course for the XY training platform on financial abuse. In this episode, Amanda explains how she came to be so involved in financial abuse. She highlights the warning signs of financial abuse and what advisors can do when they recognize financial abuse in a client's circumstances. It's a short and sweet episode, and we really hope you enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Salesforce, blaze new trails to richer client relationships with the world's #1 CRM. Salesforce has designed the financial services cloud to help you make every interaction personalized through rich client profiles centered on personal goals and pivotal life events. You can nurture deeper relationships with proactive tracking and event alerts that remind you to reach out when clients need you the most. Supercharge your productivity by managing client engagements, household relationships, and financial life goals, all from the one connected platform. It's the world's #1 CRM, imagined just for wealth management. Salesforce is excited to partner with XY Advisor to discuss how you can build richer client relationships and unlock loyalty.
Miss Amanda Cassar.
Yes, 'tis me, 'tis I.
It's good to have you on.
Thank you.
We had this is post the event we had last night.
Yeah,
which
it was a great
pretty,
event, the XY on tour. Kicking off on the GC, it was great.
Queensland is so much fun. We had some good characters on the panel.
We did, great.
Probably say the MC was a bit more of a character than some of the panelists.
Do my best.
It was it was a great session. Digital businesses and
Micro niches.
Yeah. Everyone, I'm there going, shit. Pretty impressive.
Fascinating. Good stuff.
It is very fascinating. But yourself, Amanda, what's been happening? What are you been up to?
Lots.
I saw you. I remember there's some good speaking gigs last year at the FPA conference.
Yeah, that was great. Enjoyed that. MDRT in LA last year and MDRT in Florida this year. I'm speaking at next month. So
is MDRT, is that really gets you going? What does it give you that XY doesn't?
Global.
Okay.
So when you
take it, working on it.
Yeah, great idea. MDRT is just I think I love it mostly because there's no hidden agenda. I'm not going to go and hear about Phasea and the Royal Commission. It's a global network of advisors who are all about giving back to the profession and sharing their tips from around the world and how they do things, make them work. So I just love that collaboration. So what's not to love about? You know, top minds around the world sharing their stuff.
All the advisors I know that get involved, they're all good peeps. So
yeah,
there must be something in it.
And it's a trip to America every year to meet up with all your colleagues and friends. So
yeah, totally.
That's a good thing.
Absolutely. And your business, whereabouts are you based?
Gold Coast at a place called Robina.
The Robina Town Centre?
I look over the town centre.
Nice. Those lakes that they've got there.
Yeah, it's in waterfront place. There's a little trickle of water out the back with the swans and the ducks and the water hens. So
it's lovely. And have you always been on the Gold Coast?
Yes. Born and bred Queenslander, 4th generation. So there's not many of them around. So, yes, always been on the GC.
And I'm guessing Maroon supporter.
Of course.
Hey, there's some people that like to fight the tide.
No. Look,
even though they lost?
Well, we just thought it's about time we gave you a chance, really. It was just getting boring, winning all the time. So
that's
needed
fair.
some life in it.
Oh, it sounded like you guys are getting a bit desperate. There was someone talking about Cameron Smith trying to get Paymore to come back, and I'm sensing a bit of fear.
I'm having a conversation about football.
Sensing a bit of fear here, Amanda.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, back to financial planning.
Yes.
We had a great conversation at the FPA conference, and you've been working on sharing a bit of that. about elder abuse and financial abuse in general. It's I think it's a space that a lot of advisors maybe don't necessarily understand completely because they haven't, and it's a good thing, they haven't come into direct contact with it or haven't maybe been aware of it going on because it's not always readily apparent.
No, that's right. Absolutely. So I only became aware of it when I really started. I wrote a book a couple of years ago, Financial Secrets Revealed, and one of the women I interviewed in that was a victim of financial abuse and shared her story. Her name was Tanya Target. She was an amazing lady, brilliant career in the media, walked into a relationship with property, money in the bank, and crawled out of that relationship emotionally broken, had a stroke, nothing. She had to stash $20 a week Coles vouchers at a girlfriend's place so that she'd have money when she left to feed her daughter for a couple of months. So it just, I suppose it blew my mind. It opened my eyes. I had no idea that, it was so far out of anything I'd ever been exposed to that it just made me start digging a bit more into financial abuse and seeing that it's a lot more prevalent than we think. And yes, it does go then into most of us have heard of elder abuse. We often think of that as a physical sort of abuse, but the financial side of elder abuse is very dark and very disturbing as well. So, and
it's not very evident. Like it's
no, it's not.
It's very subtle, a lot of the activity that goes on. And
I recently had a client come in who was telling me about her partner, and he's just a young man, and I would say he's financially abused by his family. He's had to gift them cars. They run up huge bills in fines that they then make him pay. And his, I suppose, way of doing it is he wants to make more money so that he can help support them. So, we often come from a really beautiful place, not realising that we have to set these boundaries and limitations. And that's something that comes with age and experience. But, it's men,
cycle,
women.
It's
it's elderly, it's young. There's no barriers for financial abuse. So it's a really interesting space to explore.
What have you learned on how to sort of pick it up a bit more in terms of now that you understand more about it? What are some of the signs that...
If you've got a couple in front of you, usually one will do the talking and one will be quite suppressed or quiet or not allowed to contribute.
Okay.
I did a little slot on a local radio station here for the oldies and was talking about financial abuse. And I actually didn't know when it was going to air, but boy, did I know when it had, because they would all ring the station, ask for my number, and all these oldies were ringing up going, actually, I think I've got a problem with financial abuse. My daughter-in-law's my power of attorney. She's closed my bank accounts. She's taking my pension. Oh. And these stories were just pouring in all afternoon. I was almost in tears by the time I left for the day, just... hearing how prevalent it was, and just frightening that it's usually our loved ones that are taking advantage as well. It nearly always is, because they've got the access and the emotional abuse goes along with it. Yeah.
So obviously, like it's a pretty. Is it getting covered in, like, they've got the aged care Royal Commission going? Is it in the scope at all as part of that? It is. Okay.
Yeah. The physical abuse that takes part in the homes is more the focus, and the aged care facilities, what they're doing. I think the aged care homes are going to have to be a lot more aware and open to the fact that it does happen, and need to know, not only advisors, but the facilities. They can usually tell when something's not quite right.
Present
they're on the front. So, if somebody's coming in and running off with the checkbook, or, suddenly Bill can't pay his fees, but there was money in the bank, or the pension's not coming in, they're the ones who are going to know. So I think it's on advisors and any in, that working space with the elderly or others who, when they find it, work out, what's our strategy? What do we do now that we've seen it? So there is an aged care hotline in Australia that you can report both financial and physical abuse. So worth looking that up.
Yep.
And look, sometimes the option is to do nothing.
Okay.
Which sounds really strange, but often the person involved doesn't want their loved one to be in trouble. And look, it can be as severe as fraud, that they're ripping them off.
Yeah.
Another one is to let them know that you've seen it and that you're aware of it and you'd like to monitor the situation, because often they won't like to talk about it or discuss it.
And they
being
might
a victim of abuse.
Self-adjust off the back of that? Or
perhaps, yeah. So it's a super sensitive area, but even with physical abuse now, the case in Australia of Alison Baden-Clay, it was the biggest murder story in Queensland a few years ago, where the husband had killed his wife, dumped her in the river, wrapped in a carpet, and then, said he didn't know where she was. And that story started with financial abuse of her. And the family have started that campaign now, Just Say Something. Okay. So all over TV and that, there's a hashtag, Just Say Something.
Yeah.
So
and
to go up to a victim,
broader audience?
That's for the broader audience.
Populace, yeah.
And that's, we've now got the domestic violence campaigns on TV, where if you hear this shouting, yelling, screaming, go and have a chat to the victim. Because if it's becoming more mainstream, then, it's hopefully going to bring it into the spotlight. We've got horrific cases in Australia. A woman dies every week at the hands of her partner or more. So
is it just more it's identified more now, or is there an actual, or is it just that it's been this bad, historically?
I think it's been this bad forever, but
and
now
it's just now more evident.
Yeah,
digital, social media, you can see the cries for help coming through there.
And I think also the barriers are coming down. Whereas it was one of those things that's not talked about. It's in the family. Often the family knew Auntie Betty was being belted, but they'd all just keep quiet because it was a personal matter. That doesn't cut it anymore. Actually, one of the beautiful stories I heard, I did a trip to India with the Hunger Project earlier this year, and it was a trip where we met elected women leaders. So India has a quota system in government where at least 30% of the elected representatives have to be women. And not just women, they have to be from all 4 castes. So we're even talking about the untouchables have to be represented at a local government level. Is it equal
representative?
Yep.
Yeah, wow.
Yep, they're working towards 50% in some areas.
Because India is very strongly, it's a significant issue. It's so deeply entrenched, that caste system.
Yeah. And also that the women don't have a voice. Some of these women, before they're elected, have never said their name publicly. They can't identify India on a map or even where they live in India. Wow. So the lack of education as well. And these women that we'd met had been trained to step up into their roles, take on a bit of power, and the stories they were telling about their villages and how they were helping women who were battered. Some of these women, as local councillor, would go and confront the men and tell them it wasn't acceptable. It's still illegal in India to do it like it is everywhere else.
Yeah, it's just enforceability. And
yeah, that she would go to the police if the situation continued. One lady decided she couldn't publicly help others until she sorted out her own house because she knew her son was hitting his wife. So I think the fact that now it's become much more okay to talk about it, then it's being, it's being brought into the spotlight. And people are taking a stand that it's not acceptable.
Yeah, I think it's I guess when you look at social media, a lot of people get concerned around going about the political influences and the way that mass mob media, social media activity can have bad effects. But I guess when it comes down to things like this, it's because it's so public, you can actually build quite good momentum around these causes because no one is sitting there going, that is acceptable. So
no. I suppose the dark side of it is that now that the women are being believed a lot more and their stories are being heard, as a mother with a son, I think it's frightening that some girls can come out and say, I've been hurt when it hasn't happened. And so there is always a pendulum swing of too far. And any mother with sons, you have to be so careful, even if they're not, hurting a girl. If she turns around and changes her mind and said, actually, I don't think I was consenting, so
I played rugby league and rugby union, and there's a lot of cases, and it goes both ways. It's
absolutely,
but it's just, I think it's just that importance for critical thinking around all of it.
It is, the whole, nobody asks to be raped or murdered, that's absolutely true, but you still have responsibility for actions and putting yourself, walking home from a bus stop, you shouldn't have to be in fear for your life. Hanging out with a drunk rugby league team maybe isn't a bright idea. So whatever the situation, we do have personal responsibility as well built in. But again, nobody asks for these things to happen to us, whether it's, physical violence, financial abuse, the whole lot. So,
well, it's interesting, Dan, how much it's become, in Melbourne, it's really emerged as a Melbourne community sort of issue. Because I go down there a couple of times a year and you talk to people, and it is because they've had.
Love Melbourne.
What's that?
Melbourne's awesome.
Oh, it's awesome.
Love visiting Melbourne.
Coffee, just beaches. That's the only thing.
There's St Kilda. There's Brighton. It's not Gold Coast, but
it's all right with a bit of mix of sewage in there. It's all good. My sister moved down there a couple of years ago, and she loves it, but she really misses the Sydney beaches.
That's understandable.
Yeah, it's because of those incidents that they've had down there, it is a much more there's a lot of they've had the marches, they've had Sydney doesn't quite. I think a lot of that gets lost in Sydney. Hasn't built that sort of.
There's a few movements in Australia that sort of followed on the back of the Me Too movement. In the States, it all sort of seemed to blow apart when the Harvey Weinstein case broke, and everything sort of started hitting the fan from there. So Tracy Spicer in Australia has started a movement over here. The women's agenda is very supportive. So you can look on those for cases and stories. There's a lot that they put out every week on what's going on in that space. So. Yeah,
is there? I guess is it national? Are these national groups that are sort of getting together?
Yes, absolutely. And when Tracy put out the call, in Australia, can I have stories from women? Some women who'd been abused in the workplace 37 years ago and never told their story to anyone are finally coming forward, going, I feel like now I can tell my story. So the platforms are now there for people to come forward.
I also think with the Royal Commission, that's really sort of opened. Just the public psyche in general up about this. Obviously it's not in the same exact sphere, but it's abuse. So it's people are getting used to the conversation around it, which is a good thing because it's not a good thing that we've had to have these conversations, but it's a good thing that a lot of the stigmas are starting to drop off around it. And
look, one of the best things for someone in that situation to do is be able to talk to a trusted friend or confidant, and whether that's a family member, a professional like a financial advisor, or somebody else that they know and trust, that if things get really bad, they can go and sleep on their couch for a week, or just have someone to talk to about their situation. And look, if we don't know the answers, don't pretend we do. Maybe do some research and say, look, I found a shelter, or I found a hotline, or I don't know what to do, I've never been in that situation. But showing the empathy and saying, look, I hear you. And look, let's either tackle this together or look for some solutions.
Yeah, well, on that, I was just thinking, what are the action points that advisors? So they identify that something's going on. I suppose from what you're saying, it's that use your relationship to understand more. But then, what do they do? What are the action options that they can take?
Well, one of the options we have now within the licensee I'm with, we actually have to identify if someone's a politically exposed person or a vulnerable person. And one of the vulnerable questions asks, are they we think they're financially abused. So we actually now have to report that back to the licence. So I think...
So the licensee's coming in to support that next step.
Ask your licensee, do they have a plan of action? What do we do when we find it? I know there was an advisor in the group I'm with who's also an accountant, who a gentleman turned up with his mother, who he knows has dementia, and wanted to take money out of her account, and he had a new power of attorney drawn up. And his first call was to the solicitor going, how could you possibly have drawn up a new power of attorney with this woman who's not able, she doesn't have capacity. And he just said to the guy flat out, I'm not giving you the money. This is invalid as far as I'm concerned, and I'll be calling your solicitor. So up to us to be the strong ones. That's not always an easy... thing to do, but also making sure our dealer group has plans in place. So if we don't know what to do, call your licensee. If you run your own license, do you have a plan? Have you put something in place? Have you done your research? It might just be call the hotline and say, what do I do? This is the situation. I don't know how to respond to this. Again, it may be do nothing. It may be monitor. It may be dob it in if it's fraud. There's always something that we can do, but understanding our options, I think, is going to be really important going forward.
Well, it really plays back into the whole advisors are across everything, essentially. And it's really good in a lot of respects in our ability to influence great outcomes for clients. But with that, you get the responsibility that we take on is important. And often we're the only ones that can actually identify these things. So it is hard because there are a lot of these little things that can happen, but they don't happen often. But to have an action plan in place is so important. And it's
sad that we have to, but knowing what to do is vital for us as well. So
I guess the tips out there for anyone that's wondering, I don't know what I do, is to reach out to your dealer group. I'm sure Amanda would be happy to take a message.
Look up the 1-800 number, give them a call and go, look, this is what I do for a living. I've no idea what to do if I find someone in this situation. Can you help me put a plan together? So,
and also probably there might be a couple of tips in Amanda's course that comes out.
Doing some filming this coming week. So hopefully you'll be meeting people who've been in these situations and gotten out. One is a lovely lady who's in the industry, currently is a BDM, whose third husband tried to murder her for financial reasons. That's as deep as it gets. I'll be interviewing Tanya, who I mentioned earlier, the journalist. These aren't battered, cowed women. These are strong women who were savvy financially. So it's really interesting, how do you go down that rabbit hole where you end up in this situation? So, we're not just talking about the woman on Centrelink who might get a payout and somebody's preying on her. This just covers all aspects. It makes much more sense to prey on someone with money. You're going to get a much better payoff if you do it. Yeah. So there's some interesting situations. Also, Georgia Lane, who was a BDM with OnePath. Okay. She's doing marketing now. Her grandfather was financially abused by his adopted daughter, and it was one of the very first cases in Australia where a power of attorney was sued for abuse of their powers, because it doesn't happen very often. So there'll be some interesting stories coming out.
Like when I talk to you about, like, hey, Amanda, that sounds pretty cool. Well, not cool, but like it's a really important thing. Interesting topic. I think people need to know about it more. I wasn't actually envisaging this, but this is fantastic. Like to get because I think obviously you could talk about it academically and go, well, yeah, this is what happens, da da da. But the stories are going to really, I think, help people understand the significance and maybe probably really open up their minds around who is a potential victim. Because I think it's easy to sort of go, well, they probably look like this, and this is the sort of
there's no set formula for what somebody looks like in this space. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm so stoked that you're putting it together.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey to go down that path, and I'm grateful to Tanya for opening my eyes. My naive, privileged life that I've lived and not been exposed to that. Very thankful for that. But to know that people do, and that, we have the opportunity to help them. So that's a cool thing too.
Yeah, well, and you were mentioning before you're going down a bit of a specialisation path, it sounds like, with one of your businesses.
So Trusted Aged Care was one that I launched a couple of years ago, more giving strategic or strategy advice into what the costs will be if you're looking at care, but it also raises these other areas.
Well, I suppose it's part of that whole assessment process.
Because these people are vulnerable. Nearly everybody you deal with, you're dealing with the power of attorney. Sometimes you never meet the actual client.
Yeah. Wow.
So it is a specialist area, and knowing what you're looking at. And look, money changes people. It's an awful truth. I'm sure we've all got somebody in our family who we think, that's the one that's going to cause the trouble when the will comes. So, there's usually a reason. The person's either just plain greedy, or they've got bills, or they've got a habit, of, an addiction of some sort, whether it's gambling or drugs or whatever, and that there's an opportunity that they're going to exploit. So that's a huge area in the aged care space as well, that powers of attorney can do that. So advisors really need to be on their toes when they're giving advice in any area really, but it's going to be more so in the aged care space. Yeah,
so in the aged care space, like if advisors haven't had much experience in that space and they come across clients, what would you suggest the next steps are around that space? Obviously, there's specialists that they can refer them to that could support that process.
Look, it's an area that if you're not going to do it often, or you don't know much about it or do it well, definitely refer to someone who has done the specialist course. Louise Biddy runs Aged Care Steps, and people come out of that with a specialist accreditation. I believe Aged Care Gurus also do something similar. So call your licensee, ask if there's someone who specialises, or, ask around, do your research.
Throw something on the Facebook group.
Exactly, if you're looking for someone in that space. And, leave it to the professionals. It's an area that's easy to muck up. It's very complicated.
Well, it's such a significant commitment with some of these homes, like the contractual agreements. And if it's not structured right from the start, then...
Can be up to 4 levels of daily fees that are paid. as well
wow.
to the home. So
Good business, some of these aged care homes.
well, I am on the Gold Coast, which we lovingly refer to as God's waiting room. So
Yes.
I figured it was the perfect opportunity to start the aged care space in this area. So
Pretty logical step for a niching.
yeah, so from Tweed up to Sunshine Coast, it's it's a beautiful area for retirees to be. Why wouldn't you want to be here? So
So your destination of going out is like the bowls club? Is that
that could be my next target market. Yeah, if I want a niche.
It's funny. We had Michael back talking about one of his clients that he'd started to work with, and as an advisor that ended up specialising in medicos and like people that work in hospitals. And he asked him like, where do you go, your clients? And he took him up, and literally he had one client in the hospital, and he just kept on going to visit that client. And as people became familiar with him, they would just all of a sudden he ended up getting this whole hospital, and that's like his whole client base.
Perfect.
Yeah, and he's like a celebrity in there. It was really cool, actually.
Just turns up with popcorn, says hi to everybody.
Yeah, maybe you just need to pick one RSL, and that's it.
Got me thinking now.
Have a couple of drinks.
Hot
just,
tea, yeah, exactly.
and
Sit around with the vets.
And the cost of beers at those places are
Yeah,
great.
pretty low. If only I liked beer.
Ah, well,
I'm sure I can do a gin and tonic.
I'm sure they can, martini or something. That's it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they'd go at mixing the Cosmos at the RSL.
Maybe just keep it, soda, tonic and gin.
Vodka, soda, yeah, something easy.
Yeah, cool. And what else has been happening? Is there other, like you're a passionate person, you like to get involved in things. You're talking about MDRT. Is there things that are coming up around that space that?
Yeah, so MDRT this year's in Miami, Florida. Lucky enough to be on a panel discussion there with some other women, just about women in advice, so that should be fun. And I will be doing a 20-minute presentation in what they call the connection zone on financial abuse. So obviously becoming a bit of a thing for me. It's the first year ever we're having a global meeting in Sydney. The current president of MDRT Global is based in Brisbane.
Okay.
So have an Australian president, and our first global meeting.
So
will
the
be in
international conference?
Yeah, we're going to have one in Sydney in September,
Wow.
1 to 3 at the ICC. So that's
cool.
very exciting.
When's that again?
September 1 to 3 at the ICC.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put me in touch with all the cool peeps that would be... Because, for
totally.
a podcast, like these...
Yes.
Some of the people that would be coming over would be phenomenal.
Amazing. Yeah, so... And they're all so willing to share, which is really great. So,
Okay.
happy to do that.
Do an MDRT special. So
Done.
Yeah.
Special podcasting for all the international visitors.
yeah,
That'd be
cool.
great.
And does it go over a
Sessions.
few days? What's the...
Yeah, it's a few days. So the volunteers usually kick in and get there the Saturday, Sunday to set up and make the experience right for everybody. Everybody volunteers their roles, so from welcoming the guests, first timers. It's very much about spirit of giving, volunteering. So MDRT is great with that. So first time we'll have the 2 in a year, which is really exciting. The other thing that's my passion, that's really exciting, is the Hunger Project that I've worked with quite a few times.
Yep.
So that came about from a connection with Business Chicks. That's Australia's biggest networking group for women. Probably
We
heard of
sent
them.
Emily down there to check it out because they've done an amazing job at how they engage with their community.
Yeah, they do. So Emma took it from a little group with 8,000 people when it was aligned to Kids Helpline to now 50,000 paid members, probably a few 100,000 on the database, and they get such brilliant speakers out. So I've been lucky to hear everyone from Geldof to Richard Branson, Ariana Huffington, Amy Cuddy, Magda Zabansky. They've just, whoever it is, they've got them coming out. They've now got the guy who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fluff, Mark Benson. I'll keep it PG. He's coming out soon. Julie Bishop's, about to tour. So
Cool.
yeah, it's a great group, and they were aligned with the Hunger Project. So I'd see, at the events, these videos of these ladies who'd go off to, check out countries like Ethiopia and that sort of stuff. And I thought, oh, wow, good on them. That's lovely. And then Emma sort of said to me one day, like, why don't you do it? And I sort of went, well, my experience with philanthropy at that stage was giving a bag of clothes to the op shop or $20 to the Surf Lifesavers. That was about it. I didn't know anything about philanthropy, and the idea of having to raise $10,000 fundraising when I'd never done that, plus find $5,000 to cover my own costs for the trip on top, was beyond daunting. So I had a lot of excuses why I shouldn't do that. But I gave it a lot of thought and I didn't have a really good reason. So I took that leap of faith and went, I'm just going to do it and put it out there. So, ended up doing my first trip to Uganda in 2015, and it just, I suppose, blew my mind. It opened my eyes to how truly grateful we should be for the beautiful country we live in. You know, most of these countries are surviving on $500 US a year. So $1 a day is their average wage. You know, they're breaking rocks, breaking their backs in agriculture. And yet they're being educated to get themselves out of poverty. And that mindset shift just blew me away that, you know, if anyone's got an excuse to be miserable, you know, years of civil war, strife, generations of poverty, it's always been this way, it's always going to be this way, you know, they'd have every reason to just go, someone needs to fix it for me. But they're turning around going, you know what, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And that just blew me away that, you know, they're willing to learn, turn things around, become entrepreneurs. So I love that so much. Went and visited the gorillas afterwards, which was really cool.
The silverbacks.
Yes, I did.
So cool.
Climbed the mountains there to look for the silverbacks. Then went to Malawi the following year.
How cool's Malawi?
Pretty amazing.
They're pretty friendly folks down there.
They really are, yeah. And then went for a dive in Lake Malawi at the end of that trip.
I did as well.
Yeah, combined.
I got a bit scared because they said that you can get these like parasites that.
Yeah, you can.
And they had to take tablets for them, like.
We went.
Prevent?
We weren't sort of in that area.
Oh, okay.
It's around.
I was like,
people wee in the riverbeds.
That's worth it? Like, yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, they said don't piss in those.
Yeah, because the parasites go into the snails. It's really, really strange.
I was like, don't tell me anymore. Just do it. Like.
Well, there hadn't been any crocodiles in Malawi Lake for 20 years until the day before we got there. So
that was the first sighting, was it?
The first sighting the day before my dive. So I figured, that's an interesting way to go. She got taken by a Nile crocodile in Lake Malawi. So.
Did you try they've got sugar shake, like it's like their local beer, but it's like a milky sort of thing.
No, I didn't get to try
Shuk
that
Shaka. It was interesting. It was a local. It's like having a milkshake beer.
One of my favourite ads over there was for Heineken beer, and it had a rabbit next to it, and it would say, probably the best beer in the world.
Probably.
That was I don't know why the rabbit.
I'm not going to go all in, but it's probably the best.
That's what Heineken
that was the legal department telling him, well, we can't claim it, but probably is okay.
Probably is all right. So,
that's awesome.
So then signed up to do India, which it was a completely different format in India.
So they run these programs and they
so they have
for you.
4 business chicks. They'll take up to 20 women. The next trip they're doing is to Ghana, which I'm so jealous. It would be amazing. And they also have leadership tours for people outside of business chicks. So entrepreneurs who want to expand their leadership game, they'll take up to 20 people to, Uganda or Ghana or some amazing place. And it's not about us sharing our leadership journey. It's about learning from these people who are turning their lives around. So you are learning these lessons from the most unlikely of leaders who, just... You're so humbled coming away from that experience.
I always find it the irony around you look at like the happiness index sort of thing and these ratings that like the Economist does,
third world, isn't it?
and the sort of statistics you're talking about in terms of income and relative to over here, and like they're happier.
Yeah,
like it's
simpler life.
Yeah, it's
they're nearly always the third world countries and the low incomes.
And even just from that, there's a lot to learn just by having to think about, why is that the case?
Yeah, and look, you don't have to go on these journeys to understand that, but I think seeing it firsthand, own eyes, meeting the people, just rubbing shoulders with them and hearing their stories firsthand, it just gives you that whole other take on what's out there, and it puts a perspective on everything here. Life's tough right now. You listen to the media, our businesses are worth nothing, our clients hate us, businesses we know it's over, our lives are ruined. And, I've already heard there's been suicides in the industry, there's people on watch. We're so busy tying our self-worth to our net worth, not realising, let's take it back to basics. This is a service providing industry that we do add value to our clients. Some of our clients do really love us for what we do, so it's really important to just have that perspective, get our head out of the negativity, realise our value and that we are so lucky to do what we do. And, if we can't do this anymore, there's other opportunities. It doesn't matter. As long as we can make ends meet, whether it's Uber driving or, there is life beyond planning for people who choose to go.
Yeah, totally.
So it's nice to just have that global view of, life's good.
Travel is the best teacher as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it is. It shows you how truly blessed we are to be here.
On that note.
On that note.
Amanda, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Adrian.
And looking forward to seeing the course. And
yeah. Stay tuned for that one. Shouldn't be too long.
Awesome.
Thank you.